The old city clock showed 3:30 when Lily pressed her face against the cool glass window. Inside the community center, a girl about her age sat straight-backed at a shiny black piano, her fingers dancing across the keys like butterflies. The music floated through the tiny crack in the window, and Lily closed her eyes, letting each note sink into her memory. This was her favorite part of the day. Every afternoon, after helping her grandmother sell flowers at the corner of 5th Street, she would run here. Her shoes were too small now, pinching her toes with every step, but she didn't care. The music made everything else disappear. "That's enough for today, sweetie," she heard the piano teacher say inside. The girl at the piano stood up, smoothing down her crisp white dress. Her mother waited by the door with a proud smile, car keys already in hand. They walked past Lily without a glance, as if she were just another shadow on the street. Lily didn't mind. She was used to being invisible. In her faded yellow t-shirt and jeans with patches on the knees, she looked like any other kid from the lower part of town. Her long black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, held together by a rubber band from her grandmother's flower bundles. But inside her head, something magical was happening. She was remembering every single note that girl had played. "Lily, time to go home," her grandmother's voice called from down the street. The old woman was packing up the last of the unsold flowers, her weathered hands moving slowly. At 72, everything took her longer now, but she never complained. Not once. Lily ran back to help, carrying the small folding stool they used. "Grandma, did you hear the music today? It was so beautiful." Her grandmother smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. "I heard you humming it, little bird." "That's music enough for me." They walked home together as the afternoon sun painted the sky orange and pink. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building with peeling paint and creaky stairs. It wasn't much, just 2 small rooms and a bathroom, but it was theirs. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing, and in winter cold air sneaked through the gaps around the windows. But Lily had never known anything different. After losing her parents in a car accident 3 years ago, her grandmother had taken her in without hesitation. Money was always tight. They survived on what they made from selling flowers and the small pension her grandmother received. There was never anything extra, never anything left over for things like piano lessons or fancy clothes. But there was love. So much love that sometimes Lily felt like her chest might burst from it. That evening, after a simple dinner of rice and vegetables, Lily pulled out her most precious possession from under her bed. It was a keyboard, or what was left of one. Her grandmother had found it 6 months ago at the thrift store, tossed in a corner with a free sign taped to it. Half the keys didn't work and it had no stand, so Lily kept it on her bed when she practiced. She plugged it in and the familiar hum filled the small room. Her grandmother settled into the worn armchair by the window, knitting needles clicking softly as she worked on a scarf. Lily placed her fingers on the working keys and closed her eyes. In her mind, she was back at that window, watching the girl in the white dress. She could see the way her fingers had curved, the way her wrists had lifted slightly at certain moments, and most importantly, she could hear the music. Her fingers began to move, recreating the melody note by note. Some keys stayed silent, broken and useless, but Lily worked around them. She adjusted the tune, found different notes that would work, made the music her own. What came out wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was alive. "Oh, my little bird," her grandmother whispered, her knitting forgotten in her lap. "How do you do that?" Lily didn't know how to explain it. She just heard music differently than other people. When a car drove by playing a song, she could remember it. When someone whistled a tune, she could play it back. The notes lived inside her head like colorful birds, each one distinct and clear. Every night was the same. While other kids her age watched television or played video games, Lily practiced on her broken keyboard. She taught herself everything: which fingers to use, how to read the rhythm, how to make the music feel right. The internet at the public library helped sometimes, but mostly it was just her, the keyboard, and the music in her head. At school, nobody knew about her gift. She was quiet, always sitting in the back row wearing the same 3 outfits in rotation. The other kids didn't bully her exactly, but they didn't include her either. She existed in that invisible space reserved for poor kids, the ones who brought lunch from home in reused containers and never had money for field trips. But Lily didn't need them to see her. The music saw her. The music knew her. One Saturday morning, Lily and her grandmother were setting up their flower stand when she heard something that made her heart skip. Two women were talking nearby and their conversation drifted over. "Did you hear about the community fair next month? They're setting up a big stage in the town square." "Oh yes, and I heard they're bringing in that beautiful grand piano from the concert hall. Anyone can perform if they sign up." Lily's hands froze, a bundle of daisies forgotten in her grip. A grand piano? In the town square, where anyone could play. "Grandma," she said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, Do you think I could play there?" Her grandmother looked at her for a long moment, and Lily saw something flicker in those tired old eyes. Pride, maybe, or hope. "Why not, little bird? You play better than anyone I've ever heard." But even as excitement bubbled up in Lily's chest, doubt crept in too. She looked down at her clothes, at her worn-out shoes, at her calloused hands from helping with the flowers. She thought about the kids from the music academy with their perfect posture and expensive instruments. She thought about how invisible she was, how people looked right through her. Could someone like her really play a grand piano in front of the whole town? That night, Lily practiced harder than ever before. The music swelled from her broken keyboard, filling the small apartment with sound. Her grandmother listened from the armchair, tears streaming quietly down her weathered cheeks. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere in the distance, a clock tower chimed 9 times, but Lily heard none of it. She was already gone, transported to a place where only the music mattered, where fingers and keys and melody became one single perfect thing. She didn't know it yet, but in 3 weeks everything would change. In 3 weeks the whole town would stop and listen. In 3 weeks they would finally see her, but for now, she was just an 8-year-old girl with a broken keyboard and a dream too big for her small room. Practicing in the fading light, preparing for a moment that would prove what she'd always known deep in her heart. That music didn't care where you came from. It only cared about where it could take you. The next 3 weeks passed like a dream mixed with a nightmare. Every spare moment Lily practiced. Her fingers moved across the broken keys until they ached, until her grandmother had to remind her to eat, to sleep, to rest. "You'll wear yourself out." "Little bird," her grandmother would say gently, bringing her a glass of water. But Lily couldn't stop. This was her chance, maybe her only chance, to show everyone what she could do. The community fair arrived on a bright Saturday morning in late spring. The town square had transformed overnight into a festival of colors. Red and white striped tents lined the streets, selling everything from cotton candy to handmade jewelry. The smell of popcorn and grilled corn filled the air. Children ran between the stalls, their laughter mixing with music from various performers. And there, in the very center of the square, sat the grand piano. Lily saw it from half a block away and her breath caught in her throat. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Black and glossy, it reflected the morning sun like a mirror. It sat on a raised wooden stage, surrounded by rows of folding chairs. A banner above announced, "Community Talent Showcase, 2 p.m. "It's real," Lily whispered, clutching her grandmother's hand tighter. Her grandmother squeezed back. "Of course it's real, sweet girl, and in a few hours you'll be playing it." But as they got closer, Lily's confidence began to crumble. Everywhere she looked, she saw kids from the music academy. She recognized some from the community center, always arriving in nice cars with their parents, always carrying expensive instrument cases. They wore pressed clothes and shiny shoes. Their hair was neatly styled, not pulled back with a rubber band like hers. A group of them stood near the stage, laughing and talking. One boy, maybe 10 years old, wore a suit jacket and carried sheet music in a leather folder. A girl with perfect blonde curls practiced her violin nearby, the notes flowing effortlessly. They all looked so confident, so prepared, so right. Lily looked down at her own outfit. Her grandmother had washed and ironed her best dress, a simple blue one that used to belong to a cousin. It was clean but faded, and there was a small stain near the hem that wouldn't come out no matter how hard they scrubbed. Her shoes were her everyday sneakers, worn and starting to separate from the sole on one side. "Maybe this was a mistake," Lily said quietly. Her grandmother knelt down, ignoring the way her old knees cracked, and looked Lily straight in the eyes. "Listen to me. Those fancy clothes? That's just wrapping paper. You know what matters. What's inside, and what's inside you, my little bird, is pure magic." Before Lily could respond, a woman with a clipboard approached them. "Are you here to perform, sweetie?" she asked kindly. Lily nodded, her voice barely working. Wonderful. What's your name? The woman wrote it down. And what will you be playing? I'm going to play something I made up myself, Lily managed to say. The woman smiled, but Lily noticed it didn't quite reach her eyes. That's nice, dear. You're number 12 on the list. The show starts at 2 o'clock sharp. Stay near the stage so you don't miss your turn. As the woman walked away, Lily heard her mutter to another organizer. Another one with no formal training. Well, it's a community event. Everyone gets a chance. The words stung, but Lily tried to push them away. She and her grandmother found a spot on the grass near the stage where they could see everything. They shared a sandwich her grandmother had packed, though Lily could barely eat. Her stomach felt like it was full of butterflies doing somersaults. At 2 o'clock, the show began. The first performer was the boy in the suit jacket. He sat at the piano with perfect posture and played a classical piece that Lily recognized from one of the community center lessons. It was technically perfect, every note precise and clear. The audience clapped politely. Then came the girl with the violin, followed by a teenage boy on guitar, then another piano student. Each one was good, really good. They played from sheet music, following every notation exactly as written. Their teachers sat in the front row, nodding with approval. Lily watched them all, and with each performance she felt smaller and smaller. These kids had been training for years with real teachers in real music schools. They knew all the rules, all the proper techniques. What did she have? A broken keyboard and melodies she heard in her head. Number 12. Lily, you're up next, the woman with the clipboard called out. Lily's legs felt like jelly as she stood up. Her grandmother gave her hand one final squeeze. Remember, little bird, the music knows you. Trust it. She walked toward the stage, aware of every eye turning to look at her. The wooden steps creaked under her feet as she climbed up. The grand piano seemed even bigger up close, massive and intimidating. The keys gleamed, all perfect and working, so different from her broken keyboard at home. As she approached the bench, she heard it. Laughter. Quiet at first, then louder. She turned and saw a group of academy students sitting together in the third row. They were the same ones who came to the community center. The ones who'd walked past her at the window like she didn't exist. And now they were looking at her and whispering, their faces showing barely hidden amusement. One of the girls, the same one who'd played earlier, leaned over to her friend. She didn't bother keeping her voice down. Is this a joke? Look at her shoes. A boy next to her smirked. Where did she even come from? I've never seen her at any of the music schools. Another girl giggled. She probably saw a piano in a movie once and thinks she can play. But the worst came from the boy in the suit jacket. He stood up slightly, looking right at Lily with a mocking smile. You play this piano? That's a joke. His friends burst out laughing and the sound echoed across the square. Other people turned to see what was funny. Some of the adults tried to shush the kids, but the damage was done. Lily felt her cheeks burning, felt the tears starting to build behind her eyes. The piano teacher from the community center stood up from her seat, walking toward the stage. Sweetheart, maybe you're not quite ready for this. This is a very expensive instrument and we wouldn't want anything to happen to it. Perhaps next year after you've had some proper lessons? It wasn't said meanly, but it hurt just the same. The teacher thought she would damage the piano. Everyone thought she didn't belong here. Lily looked out at the crowd. Some people were already losing interest, turning to talk to their neighbors. The academy students were still snickering. She saw pity in some faces, impatience in others. Then, through all those faces, she found her grandmother. The old woman was standing now, her hands clasped together, and she was smiling. Not a worried smile or a sad smile, but a smile full of absolute certainty. She nodded once slowly, and then she said, loud enough for Lily to hear across the crowd, show them what your heart knows. Something shifted inside Lily. The embarrassment didn't disappear, but it moved to the side, making room for something else. Something that had been growing inside her for 3 years, fed by every hour of practice, every melody she'd memorized, every night spent with her broken keyboard. She turned back to the piano and sat down on the bench. Her small hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. She could still hear whispers from the crowd, could still feel their doubt pressing against her like a physical weight. But then she touched the keys, and everything else faded away. The grand piano felt different from her keyboard. The keys were heavier, more responsive. They were all there, every single one working. No gaps or broken notes. For the first time in her life, she could play exactly what she heard in her head. Lily closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes rang out across the square, clear and pure as crystal. The melody started soft, almost like a whisper. Lily's fingers moved gently across the keys, creating notes that seemed to float on the spring air. It wasn't like the technical pieces the other students had played. This was different. This was a story. The first few seconds were met with continued whispers from the crowd. Someone coughed. A child asked their parent when they could get ice cream. The academy students were still smirking, waiting for her to mess up. But then something happened. The melody began to grow, building slowly like the sun rising over the horizon. Lily's fingers moved faster, more confident now. She played a run of notes that climbed higher and higher, each one seeming to reach for something just out of grasp. And then, just when it seemed the music might soar away completely, it came back down, settling into a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. The talking stopped. One by one, conversations died mid-sentence. The child who'd asked about ice cream fell silent. Even the vendors at the nearby stalls paused what they were doing. The entire town square seemed to hold its breath. Lily didn't notice. She was somewhere else entirely. In her mind, she was playing out every feeling she'd ever had. The loneliness of watching through windows. The warmth of her grandmother's love. The cold nights in their small apartment. The hope that lived in her chest like a tiny flame that refused to go out. All of it poured through her fingers into the piano. The music shifted again, turning darker, more urgent. Her hands flew across the keys in a cascade of notes that spoke of struggle and pain. But just when it seemed too heavy, too sad, the melody transformed. It became something triumphant, something that spoke of rising up despite everything trying to hold you down. People who'd been walking past the square stopped in their tracks. Shopkeepers came out from their stores. Windows opened in the apartments above as residents leaned out to hear better. The crowd around the stage swelled as more and more people gathered, drawn by the sound of something they couldn't quite explain but couldn't resist. In the third row, the boy in the suit jacket had stopped smirking. His mouth hung slightly open, his eyes wide with disbelief. The girl who'd laughed at Lily's shoes sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of her seat. The entire group of academy students stared at the stage, their earlier mockery forgotten. The piano teacher who'd tried to stop Lily stood at the side of the stage, one hand pressed to her chest. Tears streamed down her face, though she didn't seem to notice. She'd been teaching piano for 30 years, and she'd never heard anything like this. Lily's grandmother stood among the crowd with tears of her own, but hers were tears of joy mixed with pride so fierce it made her chest ache. She'd always known. From the very first time she'd heard Lily hum a tune perfectly after hearing it only once, she'd known her granddaughter had something special. The music built toward something bigger now. Lily's whole body moved with the rhythm, swaying slightly as her hands danced across the keys. The melody soared higher and higher, each note seeming impossible, like trying to catch stars with your bare hands, but she caught every single one. And then came the part that would be talked about for years to come. Lily's hands crossed over each other in a blur of movement, creating a cascade of notes that tumbled over each other like water over rocks. The sound filled every corner of the square, every heart in the crowd. It was joy and sorrow mixed together. It was struggle and victory. It was every human emotion pressed into melody. Some people in the crowd started to cry. They didn't even know why. The music reached inside them and touched something they'd forgotten was there. An elderly man thought of his late wife and how she'd loved music. A young mother held her baby closer. A teenager who'd been feeling lost and alone felt for just a moment like someone understood. The melody climbed one final time, reaching a peak that seemed to touch the sky itself. Lily's fingers struck the keys with power she didn't know she had. The sound rang out across the square, clear and pure and absolutely perfect, and then slowly, gently, the music came back down. The notes grew softer, quieter, like the last light of day fading into night. Lily played the final notes with such tenderness that it felt like a lullaby, like being tucked into bed by someone who loves you more than anything in the world. The last note hung in the air for what seemed like forever. Then silence, complete, absolute silence. Lily opened her eyes, suddenly back in the real world. Her hands trembled as she lifted them from the keys. For a moment she was terrified. Had she done something wrong? Had she embarrassed herself? She turned to look at the crowd, and what she saw made her heart stop. Hundreds of faces stared back at her. Every single person was completely still, as if frozen in time. Some had tears on their cheeks. Others had their hands pressed to their mouths. Children sat in their parents' laps, unusually quiet. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the crowd, someone started to clap. It was slow at first, just one person. Then another joined in, and another. Within seconds, the entire square erupted in applause. But it wasn't polite clapping like they'd given the other performers. This was different. This was the sound of people who'd witnessed something they couldn't quite believe. People jumped to their feet. The applause grew louder and louder, mixed with cheers and shouts. Some people whistled. Others simply stood there clapping with tears streaming down their faces. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Incredible!" yelled another. The academy students sat in stunned silence for a moment longer before they too stood up and began to clap. The boy in the suit jacket was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. The girl who'd mocked Lily's shoes had tears running down her face. Her makeup smudged, and she didn't even care. The piano teacher from the community center rushed onto the stage. She dropped to her knees in front of Lily, taking the girl's small hands in her own. "Where did you learn to play like that?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Who is your teacher?" Lily looked down at her worn sneakers, then back up at the teacher. "I don't have a teacher," she said softly. I hear the music in my head and I play it." The teacher's eyes widened even further. "You're self-taught? All of that was self-taught?" Lily nodded. The crowd heard this exchange, and the applause somehow grew even louder. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. This little girl in the faded dress with the worn-out shoes had taught herself to play like that? Her grandmother pushed through the crowd and climbed onto the stage, moving faster than she had in years. She wrapped Lily in her arms, holding her tight. "I'm so proud of you, little bird," she whispered. "So very proud." More people tried to get on the stage, all wanting to talk to Lily, to congratulate her, to ask her questions. The organizers had to form a line to keep things orderly. Local reporters who'd been covering the fair for the community newspaper suddenly realized they had a real story. Cameras appeared, notebooks came out, but in the middle of all the chaos, Lily looked past everyone to the grand piano. The keys gleamed in the afternoon sun, still warm from her touch. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. She'd shown them all that it didn't matter where you came from or what you wore, or whether you had fancy lessons. Music didn't care about any of that. Music only cared about what was in your heart. The boy in the suit jacket finally made his way to the stage. Up close, Lily could see that he was crying. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for what I said. You're amazing. I've been taking lessons for 6 years and I could never play like that." The other academy students crowded around, all echoing the same thing. They were sorry. They'd been wrong. They judged her without knowing anything about her. One of the girls, the one with perfect blonde curls, spoke up. Would you maybe teach us? I mean, not like formal lessons, but could you show us how you hear music the way you do?" Lily looked at all these kids who'd laughed at her just 20 minutes ago. They looked different now, humbled, curious, real. She smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her whole face. "I'd like that," she said. The piano teacher squeezed Lily's shoulder gently. "I have something to ask you," she said. "Would you be interested in proper lessons? Free of charge, of course. It would be my honor to work with someone with your gift. Not to change how you play, but to give you more tools, more possibilities." Before Lily could answer, a man in an expensive suit pushed forward. "I'm from the Riverside Performing Arts School," he said, handing the piano teacher his card. "We offer full scholarships to exceptional students." I think Lily here definitely qualifies. More offers came. A local music store owner wanted to donate a real keyboard to her. Someone else mentioned a youth orchestra that would love to have her. A woman who owned a restaurant said Lily could perform there on weekends if she wanted, and they'd pay her. It was overwhelming, all of it. Just this morning, Lily had been invisible. Now everyone wanted to help her, to be part of her story. As the sun began to set over the town square, painting everything in shades of gold and pink, Lily sat on the edge of the stage with her grandmother. The crowd had finally dispersed, though people kept coming by to say one more thing, to offer one more opportunity. "Are you happy, little bird?" her grandmother asked. Lily thought about it for a moment. She looked at the piano, at the empty square, at her grandmother's weathered face full of love. "Yes," she said finally, "but not because of all those offers or because people finally noticed me." "Then why?" her grandmother asked with a knowing smile. "Because I got to play. Really play. On a piano where all the keys worked," Lily laughed. "And because I know now that I was right all along. The music was always there inside me. I just needed the chance to let it out." The video appeared online that same evening. Someone in the crowd had recorded Lily's entire performance on their phone, and by Sunday morning, it had been shared thousands of times. By Monday, it was everywhere. Lily woke up to find her grandmother staring at her old flip phone in complete confusion. "Little bird," she said slowly. "The newspaper called. And the radio station, and someone from television. They all want to talk to you." At school that Monday, everything was different. Kids who'd never spoken to Lily before suddenly knew her name. They crowded around her desk, asking questions, wanting to be her friend. Teachers smiled at her in the hallways. Even the principal called her into his office, not because she was in trouble, but to congratulate her. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. During lunch, the boy in the suit jacket approached her table. His name was Peter, and he looked nervous. "Can I sit here?" he asked. Lily nodded, still not quite used to people wanting to be around her. "I meant what I said," Peter told her, unwrapping his sandwich. "I'm really sorry. I judged you because of how you looked, and that was wrong. My mom's been giving me lectures about it all weekend." He paused, then added quietly, "But honestly, I already knew it was wrong. I don't know. Showing off, I guess. Trying to look cool in front of my friends." "It's okay," Lily said, and she meant it. Holding on to anger felt like carrying around a heavy rock. She'd rather put it down. "No, it's not okay," Peter insisted. "But maybe I can make it up to you. I know a lot about reading sheet music and music theory. Things that might be useful to you. We could trade knowledge. You teach me how to play from the heart, and I'll teach you the technical stuff." Lily smiled. "I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, her life transformed in ways she'd never imagined. The piano teacher from the community center, Mrs. Chen, started giving her free lessons twice a week. But these weren't like the rigid lessons Lily had watched through the window. Mrs. Chen understood that Lily's gift was special, something that shouldn't be forced into too many rules. "You have perfect pitch," Mrs. Chen explained during their first lesson. "That's extremely rare. And the way you understand music instinctively, it's remarkable. My job isn't to change that. It's to give you more tools so you can express what you already hear." The music store owner made good on his promise, too. A brand new keyboard arrived at Lily's apartment, with all 88 keys working perfectly. Lily cried when she saw it. Her grandmother cried, too. They spent an hour just pressing keys, marveling at how they all made sound. But the biggest change came from the Riverside Performing Arts School. They offered Lily a full scholarship, including money for books, supplies, and even a small stipend for her grandmother so she wouldn't have to worry about Lily missing time helping with the flower stand. The night they received that news, Lily and her grandmother sat in their small apartment. The scholarship letter spread on the table between them. "This is everything you've dreamed of," her grandmother said softly. Lily nodded, but something felt heavy in her chest. "What about you? What about the flowers? You can't manage all that alone." Her grandmother laughed, that warm sound that always made everything feel better. "My dear little bird, I'm old, not helpless. Besides, do you think I'd let you pass up this chance? Your parents would never forgive me." She took Lily's hand. "They would be so proud of you. I wish they could see what you've become." "They can," Lily whispered. "I think they can." Starting at the Riverside Performing Arts School was intimidating at first. The building was huge and modern, with practice rooms that had soundproof walls and pianos that cost more than a car. The other students had been training in formal settings for years, but Lily discovered something important in those first few weeks. Yes, many of them had better technical training. They knew all the proper names for things, could read complex sheet music at first glance, understood music theory inside and out. But very few of them could do what she did. They played the notes on the page beautifully, but when asked to improvise, to create something from their heart, most of them froze. They'd been taught to follow the rules so carefully that they'd forgotten how to break them. Lily became a bridge between two worlds. She learned the technical skills, practicing scales and exercises until her fingers moved with even more precision. But she never lost that spark. that ability to hear music as emotion and story rather than just notes on a page, and she shared what she knew. During lunch breaks, students would gather around whatever piano was available, and Lily would show them how she approached music. Don't just play what you see, she'd tell them. Feel what the music is trying to say. What story does it want to tell? Peter became one of her closest friends. He'd given up the suit jacket and the need to be the best. Now he just wanted to be better, and Lily helped him find the emotion in his technically perfect playing. In return, he taught her music theory, how to read complex scores, how to understand the structure behind the feeling. The girl with the blonde curls, whose name was Natalie, also became a good friend. I was jealous of you, she admitted one day while they practiced together. My parents spend so much money on my lessons and I work so hard. But in 2 minutes you could do what I couldn't do in 6 years. It made me feel like all my work didn't matter. But it does matter, Lily told her. You have skills I'm still learning. And anyway, we're not competing. Music isn't a race. I know that now, Natalie said with a smile. 6 months after the community fair, the school organized a winter concert. Every student would perform, but Lily had been asked to close the show. The concert hall was packed with parents, teachers, and community members. Local news stations had even sent cameras. Backstage, Lily adjusted her new dress, a beautiful deep blue one that her grandmother had insisted on buying for the occasion. Her shoes were new too, proper dress shoes that actually fit. She looked so different from the girl who'd stood on that stage in the town square, but inside she was still the same. Mrs. Chen found her in the practice room, running through warm-up exercises. Nervous? The teacher asked. A little, Lily admitted. It's a lot of people. Remember what I told you on your first day? Mrs. Chen said. You don't play for them. You play for yourself and you let them listen in. That's the secret. When Lily's name was called, she walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. She saw her grandmother in the front row, wearing her best dress and beaming with pride. She saw Peter and Natalie and all her new friends. She saw Mrs. Chen standing at the side, hands clasped hopefully. She saw reporters with their cameras and notebooks. And for just a second, she felt that old fear trying to creep back in. The fear that she didn't belong, that she was still just the poor girl with the broken keyboard. Then she sat at the grand piano, placed her fingers on the keys, and remembered why she played in the first place. Not for applause or recognition, not to prove anything to anyone. She played because music lived inside her, because it was as natural as breathing, because it was the language she spoke most fluently. She closed her eyes and began to play. This piece was different from the one she'd played at the fair. That one had been about struggle and triumph. This one was about gratitude. It was about a grandmother's love and second chances. It was about broken things that still make beautiful sounds. It was about windows she could finally walk through instead of just looking through. The music flowed through her and she let it take her wherever it wanted to go. Her fingers danced across the keys, telling a story without words. The melody climbed and fell, whispered and soared, laughed and cried. When the last note faded into silence, Lily opened her eyes. The crowd sat motionless for a heartbeat, then exploded into applause even louder than before. People stood cheering and clapping. Her grandmother was crying happy tears again. Mrs. Chen looked like she might burst with pride. But the moment Lily would remember most came after the concert, when she was packing up her sheet music backstage. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, shyly approached her. She wore a patched jacket and shoes that looked too big for her feet. Excuse me, the little girl said quietly. I saw a video of you playing. At the town fair. Oh? Lily knelt down to be at eye level. Did you like it? The little girl nodded, her eyes shining. I want to play piano too, but my family can't afford lessons. Do you think I could still learn somehow? Lily felt her heart squeeze. She saw herself in this child, saw that same hunger and hope and fear all mixed together. I know you can, Lily said firmly. She pulled out a piece of paper and wrote down her email address. Have your parents contact me? I'm starting to teach some students and I don't charge anything. Okay. The little girl's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. Really? You mean it? I mean it, Lily promised. Because someone once told me that music doesn't care where you come from. It only cares about what's in your heart, and I can tell you have music in yours. As the little girl ran back to her parents, practically floating with joy, Lily understood something important. Her story wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every kid who'd ever felt invisible. Every person who'd been judged by their clothes or their address instead of their character. It was about proving that talent could bloom anywhere, even in the cracks of sidewalks, even in apartments with thin walls and broken keyboards. That night, lying in bed in their small apartment, Lily listened to the familiar sounds of the city outside. Car horns and distant conversations and the hum of life. She'd been offered better housing through the scholarship program, but she and her grandmother had decided to stay here. This was home. These thin walls had heard every note she'd ever practiced. This room had held her dreams when they were still small and uncertain. "Grandma?" Lily called softly. "Yes, little bird?" "Thank you. For believing in me when nobody else did. For finding that broken keyboard. For letting me chase this dream." Her grandmother appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by the hallway light. "Oh, my dear child. I didn't let you chase your dream. You were born with wings. I just made sure nobody clipped them." Lily smiled in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear music playing from a passing car. Without thinking, her fingers moved against the blanket, playing along with the melody. She would never stop doing that. Never stop hearing music in everything. Never stop believing that beautiful sounds could come from broken places, because she was living proof that they could. 2 years had passed since that day at the community fair, and the world looked very different through Lily's eyes now. She was 10 years old, taller, with hands that had grown stronger from countless hours of practice. But some things hadn't changed at all. She still lived in the same small apartment with her grandmother. She still helped with the flower stand on weekends, and she still pressed her face against windows, though now it was to look in at her own reflection and remember where she'd come from. The little girl from the concert, whose name was Rosa, had become Lily's first student. Every Thursday afternoon, Rosa would climb the 3 flights of stairs to Lily's apartment, clutching her notebook of music paper that Lily had given her. She'd practice on the keyboard that had once seemed like such a miracle to Lily, and now was passed forward to help someone else's dream grow. "No, no," Lily would say gently during their lessons, demonstrating on the keys. "You're thinking too hard about the notes. Stop looking at your hands. Close your eyes and feel it. What does the music want to say?" Rosa would try again, and each week she got a little better. Not just technically better, but braver, more willing to trust herself. But Rosa wasn't Lily's only student anymore. Word had spread through the community about the girl who taught piano for free to kids who couldn't afford lessons. Now 6 children came to her apartment throughout the week. Some showed real talent. Others just loved music and wanted to learn. Lily welcomed them all. Mrs. Chen had been amazed when she found out. "Lily, you're only 10 years old and you're already teaching? Most pianists don't start teaching until they're adults." "But I remember what it felt like," Lily had explained. "To want something so badly and think you could never have it. If I can help even one kid feel like they have a chance, isn't that worth it?" Mrs. Chen had hugged her then, right there in the practice room at Riverside Performing Arts School. "You have an old soul, Lily. Your gift isn't just playing music. It's understanding what music means to people." The school itself had become like a second home. Lily was thriving there, learning things she'd never imagined. She could now read the most complex sheet music, understand advanced music theory, and play pieces by composers whose names she couldn't even pronounce 2 years ago. But she never forgot to play from her heart. That was her promise to herself. One afternoon in early spring, Mrs. Chen called Lily to her office. The teacher looked excited, almost nervous. "Lily, I have news," she said, gesturing for Lily to sit down. "The National Youth Orchestra is holding auditions next month. It's one of the most prestigious youth music programs in the country. Students come from everywhere to try out, and only 30 are selected." Lily felt her stomach flip. She'd heard of the National Youth Orchestra. Kids who got in performed at major concert halls, sometimes even traveled to other countries. It was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. "Do you think I should audition?" Lily asked quietly. Mrs. Chen leaned forward. "Lily, I think you'd be crazy not to. But I want you to understand something. This isn't like the community fair. The judges are professional musicians, some of the best in the world. They'll be looking for technical perfection and artistic expression. It's incredibly competitive. Will other kids from Riverside audition?" "Yes, Peter is planning to. So is Natalie and about a dozen others from the school." That evening, Lily told her grandmother about the audition over dinner. They sat at their small table, sharing vegetable soup and bread, the same meal they'd eaten 1,000 times before. "What do you want to do?" her grandmother asked, her wise old eyes studying Lily's face. "I'm scared," Lily admitted. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I go there and everyone's better than me? I got lucky at the community fair, but this is different. These are real professionals judging." Her grandmother set down her spoon. "Luck? You think what happened at the fair was luck?" She shook her head. "Little bird, you spent years teaching yourself piano on a broken keyboard. You practiced until your fingers ached. You believed in yourself when nobody else did. That wasn't luck. That was hard work and talent and heart. But what if—" "Stop," her grandmother interrupted gently. "What if you do your best and it's not enough for them? Then at least you tried. But what if you don't try at all? That's the real failure. Not trying is giving up on yourself, and my granddaughter doesn't give up." Lily nodded slowly. "You're right. I should audition. Of course I'm right. I'm old and wise," her grandmother winked. "Now eat your soup before it gets cold." The next 4 weeks were intense. Lily practiced harder than ever before. For the audition, she needed to prepare 2 pieces. One classical composition chosen from an approved list, and one piece of her own selection that showcased her individual artistry. For the classical piece, she chose a challenging Chopin nocturne. It was beautiful but technically demanding, with intricate runs and delicate dynamics. Peter helped her understand the historical context, while Mrs. Chen worked with her on the subtle technical details. For her personal piece, Lily decided to do something risky. She would perform an original composition, something she'd written herself over the past year. Mrs. Chen had been hesitant about this choice. "Original work is wonderful," the teacher said carefully, "but the judges might prefer to see you interpret a known piece. They want to assess your musicality on common ground." "I know," Lily said, "but you told me my strength is playing from the heart. This piece is my heart. If they don't like it, at least they'll know who I really am." Mrs. Chen had smiled at that. "You're braver than I was at your age. All right, let's make your piece absolutely perfect." The audition was held at the Grand Theater downtown, a magnificent building with marble columns and red velvet seats. Lily arrived with her grandmother, both of them dressed in their best clothes. The lobby was packed with young musicians and their families. Lily saw Peter there, looking nervous in his suit. Natalie was pacing back and forth, practicing finger movements in the air. Other kids from schools across the state stood clutching their sheet music, some looking confident, others terrified. "Good luck," Peter said when he spotted Lily. "Not that you need it." "We all need luck," Lily replied. "Even you." They sat together in the waiting area as one by one names were called. Through the heavy doors they could hear muffled piano music, sometimes followed by the low voices of the judges giving feedback. Some kids came out beaming, others looked like they were fighting back tears. When Natalie's name was called, she squeezed Lily's hand quickly before walking through those doors. She was in there for about 20 minutes. When she emerged, she looked drained but hopeful. "I think it went okay," she whispered. They didn't smile much, but they took a lot of notes. Then it was Peter's turn. He stood up, adjusted his tie, and walked through the doors with his head held high. Lily could hear the beginning of his piece, a complex Bach invention. He played it flawlessly. More names were called. The waiting room slowly emptied. Lily's grandmother held her hand, not saying anything, just being there. Finally, after what felt like forever, Lily Rodriguez. Lily stood up on shaking legs. Her grandmother squeezed her hand one last time. "Remember, little bird, you don't play for them. You play for yourself." The audition room was smaller than she expected, but somehow more intimidating. A grand piano sat in the center under bright lights. Behind a long table sat 3 judges, 2 men and 1 woman, all looking serious and professional. They had stacks of papers in front of them and pens ready to take notes. "Good afternoon, Lily," the woman said, her voice neutral. "Please begin with your classical piece when you're ready." Lily walked to the piano, her heart hammering so hard she thought the judges might hear it. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, doubt tried to creep in. These were professional musicians. What did she think she was doing here? She was just a girl from a small apartment who'd taught herself on a broken keyboard. Then she closed her eyes and heard her grandmother's voice in her head. "You don't play for them." She began the Chopin nocturne. Her fingers moved across the keys with precision she'd practiced 1,000 times. The piece was technically perfect, every note exactly where it should be. But more than that, she poured feeling into it. She thought about what Chopin might have been feeling when he wrote it, the longing and beauty and sadness all mixed together. When she finished, she opened her eyes. The judges were writing notes. Their faces revealed nothing. "Very nice," the woman said. "Good technical control. Now your personal selection?" "I'm going to play an original composition," Lily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I wrote it myself. It's called Windows." One of the male judges raised an eyebrow. "Original work? That's ambitious." "Yes, sir," Lily said simply. She turned back to the piano. This was it. This was the moment that mattered. Not because these judges would decide her future, but because this piece was her truth. It was everything she'd learned and felt and lived in the past 10 years. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The piece started soft, like looking through a window from the outside. The notes were hesitant, yearning, reaching for something just out of reach. Then the melody shifted, growing stronger as the window became a door and the door opened. The music swelled with joy and discovery, with the feeling of finally belonging, of finally being seen. But it didn't stay happy. The melody darkened, showing that even after the door opens, there are still struggles, still doubts, still moments of wondering if you deserve to be there. And then finally the music resolved into something peaceful and strong. Not happy exactly, but content, accepting. The kind of music that says, "I know who I am now." When the last note faded, Lily sat very still. She opened her eyes and looked at the judges. All three of them were staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. The woman had set down her pen. One of the men was leaning forward in his chair. The silence stretched out for what felt like hours. Then the woman spoke, and there was something different in her voice now. Something warm. "Lily, where did you get the idea for that piece?" "From my life," Lily said honestly. "I used to stand outside the community center and watch other kids take piano lessons through the window. I wanted to play so badly, but there was glass between me and the music. Then one day I got my chance. The piece is about that feeling, about windows and doors and finding where you belong." The woman nodded slowly. She glanced at the other two judges, and something passed between them, some silent communication. "Thank you, Lily," the woman said. "That was remarkable. We'll notify all candidates of our decisions within 2 weeks." As Lily walked out of the audition room, her legs felt like jelly. Her grandmother stood up immediately, searching Lily's face for clues. "How did it go?" "I don't know," Lily said truthfully. "I played my best. Now we wait."